I was in Ecuador. Actually, it was part of my study abroad. I went and worked with vulnerable women in a center in Quito. And essentially, we worked with victims of drug trafficking who had really suffered. And we essentially worked with them on rehabilitation so that they could then go back into their lives in society. It was an amazing opportunity to be able to go and support those individuals, and one that will stay with me for a long time. Yeah, there's so much value that could be had by understanding your stakeholders and what they're measured on and how they're measured internally as well. And when you start to kind of get into that and really build those relationships with the stakeholders you have, and what's motivating them, and then how that impacts how you report back to them, because you want to build them something that they can then take back internally to their senior leadership. When you start to build those connections, I think it just unlocks so much within customer success.
Welcome to the new episode of Women in Customer Success podcast. My name is Maria Scopepili, and I'm delighted to spend some time with you today. And thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I really have a privilege of talking with a wonderful young lady who is currently a senior manager of commercial operations at Relay Technologies. Her name is Emily Nguema. Emily, welcome to the show.
Hi, Maria. Nice to be here.
Emily, where are you joining from? Where are you calling from?
I am joining from our London office. So I'm just in a little meeting room to record this episode. But yeah, really excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And before we go into details about your career and different paths that you have taken throughout your years in customer success and beyond, would you say for yourself that you are an introvert or an extrovert?
I find it hard to say. I think I'm more of an introvert in many ways. I like to spend time on my own. We have a quiet room here in the office, and I'm often found in that quiet room, just head down, getting my work done. But then I do like to socialize, and I do like to, be a part of the team as well. So I've got a bit of that extrovert quality as well, I think.
I've seen that glow on your face when you've been talking about the quiet room. So maybe there's a tendency there. Anyway, just joking. Yeah. I'm sure the audience would like to get to know you a bit better. So Emily, you will tell us more about your career path, but tell me one thing before. Would the 16-year-old Emily be surprised to find you in your current role?
Definitely. Yeah, even I'm surprised that I'm here. No, I mean, I was always passionate about languages. So I studied languages at university. I love learning new ones, speaking different languages in my work and things. And I always kind of thought that I'd be probably working somewhere in a far corner of the world, using those languages in my day-to-day. Yet here I am in London, working in a UK-based company. I have obviously done a bit of work with French clients and Spanish clients in the past, but definitely I thought I wouldn't still be in the UK at this point.
Now we have to confirm. Do you speak then English, French, and Spanish?
Yeah, I do. And I've also dabbled in a few other languages in the past. So I learned a bit of Quechua when I was in Ecuador. I tried my hand at Japanese for a holiday. So yeah, I love any opportunity to learn a language. I have a whole shelf of all the phrase books and the dictionaries to go with them. So yeah, big fan.
Well, actually, this is very surprising. I didn't expect this. So many languages and Ecuador. Tell me about that trip in Ecuador. What was the highlight and when? Why? This is awesome. Yeah, forget customer success. Just joking for the moment, but this is fun. Come on.
I was in Ecuador. Actually, it was part of my study abroad. And so I went and worked with vulnerable women in a center in Quito. And essentially, we worked with victims of drug trafficking who had really suffered. And we essentially worked with them to on rehabilitation so that they could then go back into their lives in society. So that was what I was doing there. It was an amazing opportunity to be able to go and support those individuals. And one that will stay with me for a long time. Yeah.
Wow. How long have you stayed there?
I was there for 3 months.
3 months. So that was part of the study abroad. What did you study? I mean, what takes you to the trip like that? That is awesome. I mean, not the situations were not awesome, but it is an awesome
Yeah.
opportunity to help out.
Yeah, so as part of my degree, I needed to do a year abroad. So because I was studying Spanish and French, it was up to me to decide where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Peru, but there was no space left on the Peru placement. So I ended up in Ecuador, and I literally knew nothing about Ecuador before I went. But it turned out to be one of the best experiences I've ever had. And I stayed with an amazing family who I'm still in touch with today, who just like took me in as one of theirs. And it was just, yeah, an amazing experience.
Wow. I could say that experience is still very, very important in your life, and that probably informed lots of other decisions you made throughout your career.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so when you finished your studies, your French and Spanish,
Yes.
tell me more from that moment onwards. What were the main things that happened for you to enter into customer success world?
Yeah. So as you know, a lot of people, I suppose, at the end of uni, you'll start applying to graduate programs and try and figure out what you're supposed to do. And I ended up at Ocado. So I was on a graduate program for 2 years at Ocado. And then this was at the time when we were starting to launch the Ocado Smart platform in other countries. And so we essentially needed like a partner success team. And so I was one of the first 3 partner success managers at Ocado for the tech side. So my role was basically to help our clients in France, Spain, and Sweden to launch the Ocado Smart platform in their countries. And from there, like I loved the role and wanted to do more of that. So then I moved into a senior role in that team. So I was a senior partner success manager, and I built out the EMEA and APAC functions. So I had a couple of direct reports in Japan. So that was really, really interesting, like getting to know that culture and starting to build out our partner success team. And then from there, I completely pivoted industry, but I still love customer success. So I moved into edtech, and the reason I did that was because I felt like I just wanted to try something completely different, test myself, and also have a bit more of the commercial responsibility. What we were selling at Ocado, the smart platform, is like so massive that you're a cog within a very big wheel. So moving into edtech, I had more ownership, and that was really, really an interesting time to join that company. I was at General Assembly. And so then that was again 3 more years in customer success, which I very much enjoyed. But I think by the time I left General Assembly, I was looking for a way to carry on using what I'd learned in customer success and building on that, but doing something different. And so that's why I've ended up here at Relay, working very closely with customer success still, but in this commercial operational role.
I think this is really interesting. In your few years of corporate experience, you came across lots of different teams in different types of industry, from SaaS and non-SaaS to then edtech, and then again something completely different. What would be one or a main lesson that you believe every woman should learn about their careers in their life? What was something most memorable that you have learned in this journey?
I think having changed like industry in such like a dramatic way, I suppose, and having sort of been at one point in a very much startup environment where I am now, and also have been in like a very sort of more corporate business like I was previously, I think my one kind of learning, or the one thing I always think to do, is to try and be very, I suppose, humble in how I approach things. I think that sometimes when you join a new company, it can be, you feel like you want to, I don't know, you want to make your voice heard, you want to sort of put your name on the map immediately. But I think what I've tried to do in every sort of role I've taken up or a new company I've joined is take a bit of a backseat at the start and just like take the time to absorb everything around me. And I feel like that approach has really like paid dividends, because it's allowed me in those first months to like really build my knowledge and really, get to know the team before moving into actually kind of action and trying to build my role, for example.
That's a wonderful career lesson. I have seen it many times. Oh, actually, not that many, but with some awesome individuals who had that attitude of, having a humble mindset, especially because their background was maybe a little bit, different than
Mm.
everybody else in the team. And you come with the attitude of, I don't know enough. I need to learn. I need to learn constantly. And then you're constantly absorbing the knowledge from other people. You are open to receive everything. And I've seen those people fly because they are awesome performers. They allow themselves to just experience and learn. They don't think, I know it all. That's why I'm here. I think sometimes that's the biggest obstacle in career. So thank you for sharing that lesson. So you stayed humble. What prompted you to join your current company in a role? I would like to hear a bit more from you. What do you do on a day-to-day? Because it's a very interesting role that, again, sits in between customer success and lots of other departments. And how has been this whole transition for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what made me want to join the company overall was I was craving being back in a world where I can have a tangible impact. And I think that when you work in logistics, you can see the impact you're having on what you're doing because quite literally we're delivering parcels. It's a very tangible thing. And you can see you can see the dashboards, you can see the numbers, and you can see how that's moving every day. And I really enjoy that kind of aspect. I love going to like warehouses and talking about lorries and freight and stuff. So it's just like very much up my street. But in terms of the role, having done customer success for quite a few years, I felt like I wanted to change and I wanted to still be close to customer success. This role kind of came up and it felt like it fit the bill. And then I met the co-founder, Nikki, and she's like super inspirational in terms of like how she's built up the team and how she's built up the company. And I just kind of wanted to be a part of it. So I joined. The role description, I think, that I initially saw. It's quite different to what I've ended up doing, but it's super interesting. So my role sits essentially at the cross section of customer success and the rest of the business, whether that be finance, tech, data, legal, whoever it might be. And I'm responsible for essentially supporting our customer success team in building proposals for their clients, in growing our accounts, and also ensuring like the profitability of our accounts. So I have like a financial element as well to my role. And so it's super vast, but it's a role where you really get to see all sides of the business and you're exposed. Like often in meetings with the CEO and the COO and the CFO, and like you're exposed to such a seniority and the decision making that happens. And so this role is sort of an eye opener, I suppose, a mini MBA, as some people call it, like in business. Yeah.
I love it. So you moved from a senior CSM working very
Yeah.
closely with customers to the more operational role, which sits in between of all the C-level roles because you have lots of influence in presenting the data and financials and basically the state of kind of customer success team and what goes on with customers. Now, tell me, that sounds like a very different role from the previous one or previous few. What has been the learning curve and how do you even prepare yourself for that type of a different role?
It's been a steep learning curve. I think that when I was a senior customer success manager previously, I had my portfolio of accounts and I like to think I pretty much knew what I was doing on a daily basis and I knew what my team needed to do. So I felt very secure in the structure. I think the biggest learning curve for me has been coming into a role where the structure of the role is in itself less defined. And so I think learning to embrace the ambiguity, it's been like the biggest kind of method, I suppose, that I've used to approach the role. And what I mean by that is like sometimes I find it overwhelming in terms of the number of different things I've got on my plate or the number of different topics. And I'm a very big fan of like my to-do lists and notebooks and everything. And so at the end of the week, I try and like think of or find even like the small things that I've managed to achieve or accomplish that week, because finding those within it, all the number of topics that you're handling, I think is so important, especially when you're in a role that's so vast and so changeable on a week to week basis. Like I could be working on a proposal this week for a client we currently have for an expansion project. And then next week I'm, deep diving into profitability of one of our anchor accounts. So just trying to find the little nuggets of like, I did that and I achieved something. I think that's been the way I've approached it and tried to like manage, I suppose, the variance in the work.
It sounds like you are one of the very few people who are doing that role, or if not even the only one, who has to create it, so create every single aspect of the role. So I wonder, have you already created or designed a framework that helps you organize your month and weeks or quarter, or, on Monday morning, how do you know what's on the plate for the whole week? I mean, there seems to be so many juggling, and customer success would say, oh no, we are juggling a lot. Of course, everybody is juggling. But how do you find a system in the chaos when there is like everything is there, everything is priority potentially? Where do you even start from?
It's back to basics in terms of my organization of my week. I try to essentially build myself a roadmap of my week and what I think that week should look like. I worked very closely previously with product teams, and I think that structure works very well for me. So I tried to build my own roadmap in terms of the things that I want to achieve, how long I think that they're going to take, and try and build that into my week. I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking, but I think that kind of structure seems to work for me and allows me to kind of prioritize the most important things. That said, there's always going to be something that comes up that's like the trump card that can shift everything. But I'm a big believer in just trying to keep track, have like a very systematic to-do list, law linked to your calendar, and make sure that that's like up to date all the time. And I think that helps. But yeah, it's a challenging one.
I like when you spoke about your previous role of being a senior CSM. That means by default, you know it all. You know what to do with customers. There are challenges, but you figure it out. Like that's why you were senior. So there is loads of familiarity with everything. And then from that sense of accomplishments of being, senior, well accomplished in the role, you jumped into something completely new where you are an absolute beginner. But again, then I love that jump. I love it so much because it's something very different. You're stretching yourself. You're trying out different things, and it has a huge impact on the organization because, it's a very important role. In hindsight, if somebody is asking you about that career move, why you didn't go for, director of customer success role somewhere else or a manager position? Why did you move to operational role? Like what kind of career jump was that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's a good question. I could have gone down the director of customer success role for sure, but I think I felt like I had still something more to learn. I think sometimes as well we get maybe a bit bogged down in like title and moving up the ranks in terms of title, but actually like for me, like as long as I'm still learning and as long as I'm still pushing myself, then that's what's important to me in terms of that's what motivates me every day, is being surrounded by people that are inspirational, that are, smart, that challenge me. And so if I'm getting all of that in a role, that's what I need. So for me, it was kind of an easier decision to make. I felt that I could learn something in this new role, so why not give it a shot? Because that's ultimately what gets me out of bed in the morning, I suppose.
Today's episode is brought to you by Deploy Flow, your partner for digital transformation. Do you need to build an MVP fast? Whether it's a new product, APIs, configuration for your CRMs, or modernizing your cloud apps, P-Suite gives you a team, senior squad of full-stack engineers who plug into your team and hit the ground running. Designed for founders and CTOs who want to move fast, with AI-powered tools and clear, sprint-based outcomes. No more long-term lock-ins, so if a sprint doesn't deliver, you can just walk away. For a cost and squad estimate, head over to deployflow.co/p-suite and take the quick quiz. Deployflow.co. I think I mentioned this to you just before we press the record button. Sometimes when you are in CS role, as in any other role, like you think you have to move up the ranks, right? As you said, you go to CSM, senior CSM, then maybe director, maybe whatever comes else in the same industry. Now I see you in few years' time in a head of operations and COO role somewhere, because you are already moving out of CS into something that is incredibly important for the whole business operations. I love those type of moves because I'm always thinking, what is out there outside customer success? We always like to say, as you mentioned, it's kind of like a mini MBA when you're in CS because you get to work with so many other departments. Yeah, yes and no. But then there is life outside of it. And I like seeing people, taking those courageous steps and going into something very unknown, because I've realized it can be just very scary of being a complete beginner after being very accomplished in the role already. So I just wanted to take your take as you're seeing your career now. I see you in a very much C-level role, operations. That's why you're having all of these awesome opportunities now to work with C-level. But maybe I'm absolutely wrong. Now, if nothing was off limit, and this is not an interview, but what would be the ideal type of a work for you in the next few years' time, or ideal company? Because the sky is the limit only for you now.
Yeah, I think for me, you're right. That senior operations, like VP of operations, something along those lines, that's definitely where I'd love to aim for. I think that in customer success, you build so many kind of cross-functional skills, and have it being in relationship, like being working closely with clients, it gives you, such a great perspective that you can bring back to the business. And then coupling that with the kind of role I'm doing now. Yeah, I think that's kind of where I see myself going forward, is into that kind of more operation space. And yeah, who knows, one day maybe, COO, that would be amazing. But for now, just happy to continue learning and continue kind of building my skills as much as I can, and then I'll see where things take me.
I will always jump many years ahead and tell you, yes, I see you in this particular role because I know you can do it really well. But now thinking more of, those different career paths and different jumps, I wonder if you could start your career all over again, is there anything that you would change or do differently with everything that you know now?
I'm going to say no, because I think it's important to not have regrets. So I think, everything's happened in the right way that it should happen. Perhaps looking back, I should have leveraged more kind of communities like this one, for example, like women in customer success and whatnot, to kind of build a bit more my knowledge around how other teams work and how other companies work. Because I think in the first years of my career, probably same for a lot of people, like you're very focused on what you're seeing within the company you're working in. But yeah, I don't want to say I have a regret. I think I'm happy with where I've got to, and this is the path I'm on. So yeah, that's it really.
Learning from others and learning within the community. Certainly when you were even more closely in customer success, I have seen you being involved in various different communities and participating in different learnings. I'm aware that in your CS experience, I think you're fortunate enough to have experienced SaaS model and customer success in SaaS, but also in non-SaaS business, which very often we don't talk enough now. I'm not asking you to do a huge comparison, but how was it being customer success in a non-SaaS business, and what have been some of your learnings from that area?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that the kind of experience that stands out is in my previous role at General Assembly, obviously that's an edtech business, so it's not directly SaaS. I think the similarities is that you're still trying to realize ROI for your clients, but the way you do that and the metrics that you use are just very different to what you would see in a typical SaaS business. So we were looking at like learner outcomes, for example, and how individuals like use the skills that they learned within their roles. And I think the trickier bit is probably that it can be a little bit less tangible to demonstrate the ROI. So we worked a lot on learner impact surveys, building testimonials, speaking with like the managers who had their employees go through the training programs that we were running, and and obviously building the ROI in that sense, and then presenting that back to clients. So I think it's same principles, but it's just a different way of doing things. So I think it's more kind of, you're more potentially more relationship building and more sort of consultative with your client stakeholders, and really kind of having to go like the extra mile to understand how what you've implemented has actually had an impact. And that's not going to be necessarily an increase in usage or something like that's much maybe easier to measure, let's say.
I really like how you go around it, because very often in SaaS, we tend to be focused on usage as if that's the holy grail of customer success. Yeah, if everybody are using it, everybody happy, seeing value. Not. So I actually really like that you were in a situation where you needed to focus on learners' outcomes, because for years we've been always talking about what is the outcome of all the customer success activities we're doing for customers, without very often being able to properly measure. And I can guarantee there are so many of the listeners who are in customer success currently, working with customers, who can't exactly measure the ROI of their activities and ROI of their customer success programs to the customers. Yes, we measure often in our own internal metrics, which is great because we have to measure something, but we have no idea what are the actual outcomes of the customers in many situations. Of course, it's not across the board. So I really love that approach. When you're almost not in SaaS, you have to think even harder. How do we measure those outcomes, and how do we really focus on the outcomes? Because very often in other situations, we may be not deceiving ourselves, but we may be quite happy to accept our own internal metrics rather than focusing firstly on customers. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely agree. And I think there's so much value that can be had by understanding your stakeholders and what they're measured on and how they're measured internally as well. And like when you start to kind of get into that and really build those relationships with the stakeholders you have, and like what's motivating them, and then how that impacts how you report back to them, because you want to build them something that they can then take back internally to their senior leadership. When you start to like build that kind of, those connections, I think it just unlocks so much within customer success. And I think, so not always, but sometimes customer success, if you're not careful, it can become like a bit of this post box situation where you're bringing information in and you're passing it on, and vice versa. And I think when you can become that consultant to your client and then the internal consultant as well, that's when like we're really getting value from the customer success function and the customer success team.
It's very well put. I'm a firm believer that consultative skills are one of the most important skills that CSMs need to have now and in the future, probably even more with all the AI. This will never go out of fashion. Just being able to understand customers' business, ask deeper questions, and really point that value that they're receiving. Emily, thank you so much for joining the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. And as we are wrapping up, I wonder what would be your advice or a message for aspiring leaders in customer success, or those ones looking what is beyond customer success? What are your parting words for them?
I think it goes back to kind of what I said, just being humble. I think that it can be challenging, like trying to like get into a leadership role in customer success. Like that is definitely true. I think sometimes just finding opportunities to take the lead is the first step in that. You might not have a leadership title, but that doesn't mean that you can't show that you're an actual leader. And I think, whether that's supporting someone with their onboarding or becoming a buddy internally or launching a system that sort of supports that, or whether it's even just something like really simple within your team, like you rolling out a new process to help the team work more efficiently, that's all showing your leadership skills and like putting you on that pathway and to becoming a leader, even if you're not technically called a leader and you don't have direct reports. And I think that finding those little pockets of opportunity is so important when you're kind of aiming towards something in a more leadership capacity later on.
This is a wonderful advice. Thank you for sharing it. Not every role or every path needs to be towards leadership path in title. There are so many different ways to lead.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us, Emily.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate you taking time to learn something new and propel your career in customer success and beyond. If you like this episode, share it with your colleague, with your team member, with someone you know needs to hear it today. We appreciate your support, so please follow us and subscribe to our channels so many more women can hear about this.